There is a man in Nara who spent 31 years as a train dispatcher. Split-second decisions, thousands of lives moving through his hands every shift. The kind of job that should have wrecked a nervous system. He is 74 now, and if you sat across from him, you would notice something almost unsettling. He does not startle. He does not rush. When something goes wrong in a conversation, a difficult subject, an unexpected question, there is a small pause and then a calm, considered answer. Nothing seems to knock him off center. He did not retire into that calm. He built it, over decades, through habits so ordinary he would not think to mention them. And somewhere right now, someone is sitting in a quiet room with nothing actually wrong, feeling their chest tight, their jaw clenched, their mind scanning for the next thing to worry about. Not in danger, not in crisis, just permanently braced, in a body that seems to have forgotten how to stand down. Here is what almost nobody tells you about that state. It is not your personality. It is not a fixed trait you were born with. It is a pattern your brain has learned through thousands of repetitions, and the same mechanism that learned it can unlearn it. The word for this is neuroplasticity. Your brain physically reshapes itself in response to what you repeatedly do. The pathways you use most often get stronger, faster, more automatic, which means anxiety, practiced daily for years, becomes a well-worn road, and calm, practiced daily, becomes one too. The 7 habits in this video are the practices Japan has used for centuries to build that second road. None of them are dramatic. That is deliberate. The brain does not rewire in response to intensity, it rewires in response to what it does most often, which means the practices that work are the ones small enough that you will actually keep doing them on an ordinary, tired, unremarkable Wednesday. Habit number 4 is the one with the strongest and most immediate physical effect, and it takes about 90 seconds. And habit number 7 is the one that explains why the other 6 work at all. Before we begin, one thing worth understanding, because it changes how you will hear everything that follows. Calm is not the absence of stress. That is the mistake almost everyone makes. Waiting for a calm life, a calm week, a calm hour, before allowing themselves to feel calm. But the dispatcher in Nara did not have a calm job. He had a nervous system that could return to baseline quickly and repeatedly, no matter what the day threw at it. That returning is the actual skill. Not avoiding activation, but recovering from it. And recovery is trainable the way a muscle is trainable, through small, specific, repeated practice. There is one more thing worth knowing before we start, and it makes the whole list easier to trust. The brain does not reshape itself through effort, it reshapes itself through repetition. That distinction matters enormously because it means none of these habits need to be done well. They need to be done often. A mediocre breath taken daily beats a perfect breathing session taken once a month every single time. 7 habits. Let us begin. Habit number 1. Slow your exhale. Deliberately several times a day. Not deep breathing, not a session, simply making your out-breath longer than your in-breath, a handful of times scattered through an ordinary day. Here is the mechanism, and it is one of the most reliable in the body. Your autonomic nervous system has 2 branches, one that activates you and one that calms you. The calming branch runs largely through the vagus nerve, and it is directly influenced by your breathing. When you inhale, your heart rate rises slightly. When you exhale, it falls. Lengthen the exhale and you are directly, mechanically telling your heart to slow. This is not a metaphor. It is plumbing. Research on heart rate variability has consistently found that slow breathing with an extended exhale shifts the nervous system toward its calmer branch within a minute or two. In Japanese practice, breath control sits at the foundation of nearly everything. In the martial arts, in the tea ceremony, in calligraphy. Not as a mystical technique, as a control lever for the state of the body. Try it now, wherever you are. Breathe in through your nose for a count of 4. Out slowly through your mouth for a count of 8. Do that 3 times. Notice what changes in your shoulders. There is an even faster version worth knowing, sometimes called the physiological sigh described by researchers at Stanford. 2 inhales through the nose, one on top of the other, followed by one long, slow exhale through the mouth. A single cycle produces a noticeable shift, and it is quiet enough to do in a meeting or a crowded room without anyone noticing. Do that 3 or 4 times a day, at no particular moment for no particular reason. You are laying road. That is habit number 1. Habit number 2. Move your body at the same time every day. Not intensely, not for fitness, A walk, a stretch, a slow set of movements at roughly the same hour every day. The consistency matters more than the content. Your nervous system runs on prediction. It is constantly forecasting what comes next, and a body that cannot predict its day stays lightly braced against uncertainty. Every reliable daily anchor you install reduces the amount of forecasting the system has to do. Japan formalized this in a way most Westerners find remarkable. Radio Taizo, a short program of simple calisthenics, has been broadcast every single morning since 1928. Parks fill with people doing the same movements at the same time. Children do it at school. Workers do it before shifts. It is not about the exercise. It is about the whole nation having a predictable daily anchor. And here's why the same hour matters more than the activity. If you move whenever you feel like it, the practice depends on motivation, which is unreliable. If you move at the same hour, the practice depends on the clock, which never fails to arrive. Within a few weeks, the body begins anticipating it, and anticipation itself is calming, because the day now contains a known, reliable point of rest. Choose one time. Choose one simple movement. Do it daily. The calm comes from the reliability, not the exertion. That is habit number 2. Habit number 3. Use your hands for something slow and repetitive. Cooking without a screen, folding laundry properly, sweeping, washing dishes by hand. Gardening? Something with your hands, repetitive and slow. There is a reason this settles the mind. Repetitive manual work occupies just enough of the brain's attention to interrupt rumination, that looping, verbal, anxious commentary, without demanding enough to create new strain. The mind is given something to hold that is not a worry. In Zen tradition, this is Samu, the practice of manual work as a form of meditation. Monks sweep, cook, and clean, not because the temple needs it, but because the sweeping itself is the practice. There is no distinction between the chore and the meditation. Notice how the modern instinct runs exactly opposite to this. We put on a podcast while we cook. We watch something while we fold. We fill the manual task with more input, and in doing so, we remove the one thing that made it restorative. The silence was not empty space to be filled. The silence was the medicine. You do not need a temple. You need 15 minutes of something slow, done with your hands, without a screen or a podcast filling the space. Let the task be the whole event. That is habit number 3. And now, habit number 4. The one with the fastest physical effect. Habit number 4. Cool your face when you feel activated. This one sounds strange until you understand what it does. When you feel your chest tighten and your thoughts speed up, splash cold water on your face, particularly around the eyes and cheekbones, or hold something cold there for 30 to 60 seconds. The mechanism is the mammalian dive reflex. When cold hits the face, especially around the eyes and nose, the body triggers an automatic response designed for cold water immersion. Heart rate slows, blood flow shifts inward, and the parasympathetic nervous system engages sharply. It is one of the fastest physiological routes to calming an activated body, and it works whether or not you believe in it, because it is a reflex, not a technique. Japan's long tradition of massage, purification with cold water, has understood this experientially for centuries. Cold water on the face and body was used to settle and clarify the mind before important acts. What makes this habit unusually valuable is that it works from the outside in. Most calming techniques ask the mind to talk the body down, which is difficult precisely when you need it most, because an activated mind is not a persuadable one. This one bypasses the argument entirely. It acts on the body directly and the mind follows afterward. Because a body that has physically calmed does not sustain a spiraling thought as easily. You do not need a waterfall, a cold splash at the bathroom sink, 90 seconds when you feel yourself climbing, and a splash first thing in the morning before anything else sets a calm and alert baseline for the day. That is habit number 4. Habit number 5. Sit in one place and look at one thing. Choose one spot. A window. A corner of the garden. A single plant. Sit there for 5 minutes and simply look at it, without a phone, without a goal, without trying to relax. Here is what this trains. Modern attention is scattered and fast, hundreds of micro-shifts an hour, each one a small activation. Sustained soft attention on one unchanging thing is the opposite pattern, and like any pattern, repetition strengthens it. Japanese gardens were designed precisely for this. A karasansui, a dry rock garden, contains no action and no narrative. There is nothing to figure out. It exists to be looked at length until the looking itself becomes restful. There is a physical component too. When you look at something far away, the muscles around your eyes relax in a way they cannot when focused on a screen at arm's length. Vision and stress are more closely linked than most people realize. Narrow, close focus is associated with an alert state, while wide, soft, distant gaze is associated with a calm one. Choosing something distant to rest your eyes on is therefore doing two things at once. You do not need a garden. A window is enough. A tree outside is enough. 5 minutes of resting your eyes on one thing. Daily, your attention learns the shape of stillness by practicing it. That is habit number 5. Habit number 6. Finish one thing completely before starting the next. Not multitasking, not switching. One task carried through to its end before the next one begins. The reason this matters for calm is specific. Every unfinished task remains partially active in working memory, a phenomenon psychologists have studied as the Zeigarnik effect. 10 half-finished things do not produce 10 paused processes. They produce 10 small open loops, all consuming a fraction of attention simultaneously. That is what mental noise actually is, and it is why a day of constant switching leaves you exhausted without any single task having been hard. Japanese craft traditions are built on the opposite value. Ichigo Ichi, one time, one meeting holds that this moment, this task, this encounter will never occur again in exactly this form, and therefore deserves complete attention while it lasts. Start with something small enough that finishing is guaranteed. Wash the dishes, all of them, before opening your phone. Answer one email fully rather than skimming 5. Read one chapter rather than 3 beginnings. The size does not matter. The completion does, because each completed loop is one fewer voice in the background. Pick one task today and finish it entirely before you touch anything else. Then notice afterward how much quieter your head is than usual. That is habit number 6. And now habit number 7, the one that explains why the other 6 work. Habit number 7. Practice calm on ordinary days, not stressful ones. Here is the mistake nearly everyone makes with everything on this list. They save it for the crisis. The breathing exercise gets remembered during the panic. The cold water gets used during the spiral. The walk gets taken after the terrible week. And it barely works, because a nervous system in full activation is the hardest possible condition in which to learn something new. This is where Japanese practice diverges most sharply from the Western approach. In Japan, the calming practices are not emergency tools. They are daily form kata, repeated on ordinary days when nothing is wrong, over and over until the pattern is so deeply grooved that it runs automatically when it is finally needed. The dispatcher in Nara did not learn to be calm during emergencies. He practiced calm on 10,000 uneventful mornings, and by the time an emergency arrived, calm was simply the road his nervous system already knew how to travel. That is what neuroplasticity actually requires. Not intensity. Repetition, in low-stakes conditions until the new pathway is stronger than the old one. You are not managing today's stress. You are building the person who will meet next year's stress differently. So do the slow exhale on a boring Tuesday. Take the walk on a day you do not need it. Splash the cold water when you are already fine. That is not wasted practice. That is the entire practice. That is habit number 7. Here is everything in one breath. Lengthen your exhale several times a day. Move your body at the same hour daily. Use your hands for something slow and repetitive. Cool your face when activation rises. Sit and look at one thing for 5 minutes. Finish one thing completely before starting the next. And practice all of it on ordinary days, when nothing is wrong, because that is when the pathway is actually built. 7 habits. None of them require quiet circumstances, a retreat, or a change in your life. They require repetition on unremarkable days, which is the only condition under which a brain has ever rewired itself. Your anxiety is not your character. It is a road worn deep by use. And a road, given enough time and enough footsteps, can always be worn somewhere else. That is the quiet hope inside all of this. The bracing you feel is not a sentence you were handed. It is a habit your nervous system learned, faithfully, because you asked it to, thousands of times without ever meaning to. And it will learn something else just as faithfully, if you give it something else to practice. Now, before you close this, I want to ask you honestly, which of these 7 is the one your days are most missing? Is it the breath you never lengthen? The hands you never use slowly? The one thing you never finish before starting the next? Or is it the last one? The practicing on ordinary days? The thing you have only ever reached for once the storm already arrived? Drop the number in the comments, 1 through 7. because naming the one thing is the first step toward building it, and someone reading your comment may recognize their own bracing in it and begin to. If this changed how you think about your own calm, share it with one person who has been carrying a tight chest for years and calling it their personality. Take care of yourselves. I will see you in the next one. This content is for general well-being and lifestyle inspiration only. It is not a substitute for advice from a qualified medical or mental health professional. If anxiety is significantly affecting your daily life, please speak with a doctor.